It is Memorial Day, the official beginning of summer, and the offseason is not too far away. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we dive into what the Magic might do with all that beautiful cap room and how the future is coming faster than you think. It's all on today's episode of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 26th. It will be May 27th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we have part 2 of our conversation with Keith Smith of Spotrac. We talk all about what the Magic might actually do this offseason, how they could use their cap room, and how they're using this summer to prepare for the future beyond. If you missed it, you can check out part 1 of the conversation in our previous episode of Locked On Magic, where we chatted about what success does for the Magic and how it changes their approach this offseason. We'll get to a lot more on what the Magic will do now that we're done looking back. Kind of Memorial Day will be our dividing line of when we start looking forward rather than looking back. I got a few more looking back episodes planned, but we'll look forward today on Locked On Magic. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, I want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, this great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. To search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Now, without any further ado, let's get to it. Part 2 of our conversation with Keith Smith of Spotrac. Let's get into that then, and kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what the Magic can do this offseason. And I want to end the conversation, end the show talking about the extensions and the new TV deal, which you kind of put a lot of what's going to happen with the NBA here in perspective, and get into why this offseason especially feels important because of the way things are going to be moving down the road. The Magic have cap room this offseason. They've had cap room the last few offseasons. They've kind of pitched to roll it over. It feels like they're going to spend it this offseason. I'm not against bringing Gary Harris back. I think that'll, get a lot of commenters going on the when this premieres live. But I'm against Gary Harris coming back as your starter. I don't think he's a starter, especially with what the Magic need from the guard spot. But kind of when you look at the Magic's cap room, we laid a little bit out. How much are you estimating that they have to spend, and how should they kind of maneuver?
So there is no team I have reworked again the estimate on more than the Magic. And a lot of that is because they've built in so much flexibility. So if we assume nothing happens with any of the guys who have guaranteed money on the books very quickly, that's Cole Anthony, which, did you know Cole Anthony has the most guaranteed money for next season? Like, a lot of people, I don't think, realize that. Jonathan Isaac has the biggest contract, but it's non-guaranteed. Cole Anthony at 12.9 is an extension.
We anticipate they're going to guarantee that deal. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And that's honestly, that's one of the ones I've really changed on. Because when I was doing their projections back, and just so everybody knows, my first projection for next, when I do my first look at 2025 cap space, will be in mid to late July, after free agency is basically more or less wrapped up for this offseason.
When the rosters are settled and we all go enjoy, we all actually get to go enjoy our summer for
exactly. Then I'll come out with, here's what we're already looking at there. With Isaac, I wrote him off because I was like, I don't think he's ever going to play or play meaningful minutes. So they're going to wipe that away and go. That's changed. Now they're going to guarantee that contract, bring him back. There was a world midseason where I said, maybe they waive him with the idea of, let's bring you back at $10 million for next year, but we're going to do a 3-year, $30 million contract at $10 million a year or something like that. I think that's even now too risky with some of the other teams that have cap space. I think they'll guarantee it and figure it out. If nothing else, if he gets hurt it's a tradable $17.4 million contract that you could throw into a deal. So where I'm at with their guaranteed money which is for, let me make sure I get this right, 7 players, they have about $66 million on the books. Then I have them keeping Isaac in Houston. A couple people have questioned, why Caleb Houston? He was the first guy that went to anytime someone was hurt, right? He got minutes. Anytime one of the wings or guards was out, he was the first one who got a starting spot or got minutes when one of those guys was out. Jamal Mosley likes him, and no, he's not bad.
Giving up on a 21-year-old is usually that's at least shown he can play a little bit is usually a bad idea.
Here's the other thing too. Makes $2 million. The minimum cap roster charge is $1.6 million. It's not enough to just bounce a guy who's shown at least he can play a little bit. So now you've got those 9 players, right? You've got the 9 guys plus those 2 non-guaranteed plus the first round pick at 18. Now that puts them at $89 million. So if we just went with that on the books, the Magic would have about $49.5 million. Based off of conversations I've had with folks, just gut feel, right now, I don't see them necessarily just renouncing and moving on from Markelle Fultz and say completely out of the fold. I think there's a world where they say, we want to keep his bird rights just in case we need another guard, just in case we need to bring him back. It's not coming back on the contract he was on previous. It would probably have to be, a little less than what he made
like
previously.
Mid-level.
Yeah. Mid-level
like $8-9
range
million.
there. Yeah. And that means you're wiping away all the rest. So you're declining the team option for Ingles. You're declining the team option for Mo Wagner. But what's important to note is the team option ones, you have to make those decisions before free agency starts. The cap holds and the like, so Fultz, Gary Harris, if they did move on from Ingles and Wagner's team options, their cap holds as free agents. You don't have to do anything with those until you need to. So the big thing is, even when we say the Philadelphia 76ers or the Detroit Pistons, because those are the two everybody repeats all the time, have 60+ million in cap space, they don't to start the offseason. They're going to have to renounce free agents. They're going to have to do stuff to get there. You don't have to do any of that until you get there. So my estimate for the Magic, if you keep Fultz in the fold with his cap hold, is about $25.2 million. Low, right? People keep saying, I thought they had 40+ million. But you bounce Fultz out of there, now you're up to $49.5 million. Let's just say there was a world where they're, we're done with Jonathan Isaac too. Get rid of him. And heck, why not? Let's say Caleb Houston's gone as well. Now we're at $66.6 million in cap space. Probably not a great number for certain areas of the internet to be on that combination of 3 digits, but it is what it is. That is just math. I promise. It's just math. But yeah,
Anthony Black is on the roster.
That is true, right? But that is where you get to a place where it is a position where it is, let's just be very, understanding with the Magic of I will be shocked if they don't use cap space this summer, just because there's so much of it so readily available with that. Last thing I'll note, all of those calculations also involve either doing the process which the Magic have done in the past, is agreeing not to sign former first-round pick Fran Vasquez again, or finally, for the love of God, please just renounce his draft rights so I can get him off my cap sheet. I don't need him on there anymore. He is now, just in case anybody's wondering, he is actually fully retired from playing professional basketball, but it doesn't matter. The cap hold still sits on the books until the Magic do something with it. So let's just renounce his draft rights.
Yeah,
I don't think we have to worry about another team swooping in and signing your former first round pick anymore.
It's probably time to do that. And I think we'll all celebrate. When that finally happens, please let me know so we can let the world know and celebrate appropriately.
We'll pop a bottle of Spanish wine somewhere and
something like
goes
that.
To the I don't even remember what year he was drafted now.
2005.
2005, yes.
Year after
so
Dwight.
the nearly
year after
20-year run of his draft rights on the books.
Yeah.
Maybe for sentimental purposes and round number purposes, they should wait till next summer.
I mean, I still wear the draft hat from that year. It's my lucky hat. So
there it is.
Let's take a quick break from our conversation. Give you a quick word from our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Today's episode of Locked On, now that you're listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic, I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. It's Memorial Day. But if you're like me, you spend a lot of time working from home, you're looking for the best sports analysis. And frankly, you're not going to find it on your TV. I'm sorry. You're not going to find it from the national networks. They just want to shout at you. No one likes that. You can take a little shouting here and there, but you don't want to be put on edge. You want the best analysis from the people who know their teams best. And that's what Locked On Sports Day brings you. It is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming, with can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news from local experts who know their team best. It's now streaming on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Like you said, like there are a lot of different machinations. And, I've been telling people I'm kind of 50-50 on keeping or letting Joe Ingles walk because he's a super valuable veteran. That's an $11 million trade piece you can move around, but very clearly kind of Ingles is kind of on his way out, as good as he was for the locker room for this team. The Magic are kind of graduating from a place where they should be paying a Joe Ingles $11 million a year to be a good locker room presence. Like that last summer, that was we're spending money because we are required to spend money. And it takes a premium to get veterans to come play for a young, unproven team. And look, Joe Ingles.
Let me jump in there real quick if I can, Phil, because this is a really important thing you said. We're spending money because we need to spend money. Under the new CBA, the big thing everybody focuses on is second apron. We'll
get there in 5 years or so.
What's that?
We'll get there in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of hope the Magic are good enough that becomes a concern, right? So that means we're title contenders here in Orlando. I think second apron up here, that the idea was let's push those teams down. Warriors, Clippers, what the Nets were becoming, what the Celtics are. Sixers are now. Or not Sixers, Suns are now. You want to push those teams down closer to in range with everybody else. But on the other end, got completely skipped over by a lot of people was the NBA basically said, hey, if you don't spend to the salary floor by the end of the offseason, there is no more going into the season with $40, $50 million in cap space just sitting on your books. And then what the Spurs and the Pacers were a couple years ago, they were everybody's favorite third team into any trade machine because it was, hey, these guys, they're not really going to want that just dump them on the Spurs. They'll take them and send them a pick and we're good and we'll call it even. Now what happens is if you hit the end of the offseason and you are under the floor, an artificial cap hold gets put on your books that essentially wipes away that flexibility. So there's no more world where you can be $40 million under the cap because the NBA eats that up. Why did they do that? If you go in $40 million under the cap, that doesn't introduce any new money into the system because what you're doing, if you trade for a player who makes $30 million, that player already makes $30 million. They want team spending. So you want to take the very super expensive teams, drive them down. They were trying to drive up the less expensive teams here. For anybody watching, I put my hands very close. They're never going to be even like this. That's not going to be a thing. But let's put everybody a little bit closer.
We want everyone in a window.
Yeah, exactly. We want everybody within 10, 20 million of each other on either side. So that way we're not having some teams sit out and don't spend while other teams spend. And also we don't need these teams that are just, we're not going to spend. We're just going to forever and always collect that luxury tax check from the other teams that did spend and go. So that's a really important note. The Magic have to use some of their cap flexibility this summer simply because they have to spend some of wherever they land out. Yeah, there's a world where you could do that just by pick up these options, re-sign these guys, and we're already over the cap, and we just move forward with almost the exact same team. Sure, you could do that. I don't think that's going to be how it goes, but that is out there. I will also say this too, with like Ingles and Wagner. I very much believe there is a world that their options get declined because they're both, let's face it, they're a little overpaid on those contracts for what they are. Wagner less so. Ingles definitely a little.
Ingles wasn't overpaid because when you're
like, wanted him,
when you're a young team that hasn't done anything, you gotta pay a premium to convince veterans.
There's a world where they don't make the playoffs without his influence.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think though, decline those, they may both be back anyway on new contracts for a little less money, and it may be contracts where it is, hey, so we had the room exception, that's now going to go to Mo Wagner, which keeps him at about $8 million, and we can fill it that way after we use our cap space. And hey, Joe, we have $5 million left in cap space. Remember last year when you probably should have made $5 million and we gave you 11? Hey, we'll give you 5 now. Can we kind of now we're evening it up on both ends? Yeah, sure. Let's go. I'm happy here. Let's move forward. Or Joe Ingles may just be in the phase of his career where it is, who's the next young team I can jump to help go? I mean, that could be where we're at, but he seems to like it here, seems to be happy here in Orlando. So I would not rule it out by any means if it is Magic decline those team options, because I think in those cases it's just strategy. It's how you make the math work. But those guys may be back anyway.
Yeah, and I'll push back on this a little bit. I think it's very, very unlikely that they decline that team option on Mo Wagner. He was just so important to making that bench group function and had such a good season. Honestly, I feel $8 million is a bargain for him, and that he could, I know there's not a lot of cap room in this environment, but obviously there's a reason for him to still be in Orlando. Like I think he really enjoys playing with his brother. He owes a lot to the Magic for kind of rescuing his career and kind of giving him a role. And the Magic, know exactly what they're getting from Mo Wagner. I think you kind of take that for granted too, that, yes, guys want to expand and grow the roles, but the Magic know what Mo Wagner is going to give them in the minutes they give him off the bench, and know that he'll be good for a couple games where he finishes, and he gives them a little bit of an edge that, that a lot of these guys are a bunch of nice guys, which is great. Mo Wagner and Joe Ingles gave them a little bit of an edge that definitely showed up and helped them.
Mo knocks guys down and then looks at him and laughs at him. Like that. In every team
he flexes to the bench. Like people think he's showing the other team up, but that's just Mo Wagner.
Keep it clean for the show here. Every team needs an a-hole, right? Like every team needs somebody like that. He's what that is for the Magic. He's an irritant. Like he's somebody who gets under people's skin, but you need that if you're going to be a good team. I'll push back to your pushback and say this. I think they declined his team option, but only because they already have something lined up to do.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Anyway, I think he will be back. I just think to maximize their flexibility this summer in their spending power, he goes. I think what probably the most likely path is they decline his team option. He gets a very similar type deal, around $8 million, where it is either that comes out of leftover cap space or they just give him the room exception and say, you get the room exception when all is said and done. It is when anybody looks up his salary history, it'll look like the Magic picked up his option, but I think in functionality it'll be slightly different, just because I think they're going to want to maximize that cap space to get there. Because that the challenge for the Magic is it's just that decision has to be made before free agency opens. Now, we're all grown-ups here. We can all be adults. Tampering happens. The Magic already have somewhat of an idea of guys that they can get. Guys that are interested in the Magic have already let the Magic know they're interested. As long as you don't work some complicated 3-team deal that involves sign-in trades and everything else, and then you leak it to the media a week ahead of free agency opening, we can all be grown-ups and know where these things are going. Like the D'Angelo Russell stuff came out the other day. I don't know how much I buy that. I don't know that he's necessarily a Magic player, but fine. I'm sure there's already some sense of where the two sides are at, if that's the direction they want to go. So that is part of it. With, if you do see his option get declined, that tells me they have a plan. They're ready to go. They're not going to do it just because, we'll see. That's probably not a thing. So just, everybody needs to be, let's just all be grown-ups on this.
Yeah, a lot of, they can't maybe have direct conversations, but there are back channels. There are back rooms where they're talking. They're not texting because the NBA can ask for your texts. There's a reason.
Hey, D'Angelo Russell really likes Disney. He really wants to live near when Universal opens that new park. He's really interested in being there to go.
Big How to Train Your Dragon fan.
Right? Yeah, he just wants to be right down the road. He loves Nintendo and wants to see Nintendo. And just so you're aware, it's stuff like that is where that's out there. So
and I would agree with that. If the Magic all of a sudden decline all these team options, and on, I think it's June 29th is the date. That to me is like the tide coming back, and we know what's coming. And obviously the draft is going to happen before we kind of get to the next phase of what this summer, well, honestly, what this summer is really about for the Magic. We're gonna have the draft obviously beforehand. And I would anticipate that it's not, obviously cap room is not just about free agents. I know that's a big thing that you remind everybody. I try to remind everyone that too. It really feels like this, there's not a lot of money going around. There's not a lot of money to spend this summer. There are a lot of teams that fell short of what they wanted to do. Cleveland, Phoenix, Lakers, Nuggets now, Clippers didn't advance, obviously, the Pelicans, the Kings. There are a lot of teams that I feel like are going to be looking to make some major moves and trades. I think there are two aspects to this that we have to think about. How open to trades should the Magic be, as opposed to dealing with free agency and maybe some of the uncertainty of free agency?
Very. I think trades are the way this summer. Yeah. I think that's going to be how this happens. Over on NBA Front Office Show, Trevor Lane and I have already branded it Summer of the Trade, because as you said, there's only a handful of teams that have cap space. Of those teams, only a couple of them have true max cap space. And there's very few free agents worth spending anything near that on. But it'll come out. My eventual top 50 free agents will be out on Spotrac relatively soon here. Probably of the top 10 of that 50, 8 of them are not very likely to change teams. They're free agents, so we have to put them on the list, but they're probably staying right where they are.
We're not there's a reason we're not talking about James Harden and talking about Tyrese Maxey, LeBron. Emmanuel quickly has been kind of thrown in there a little bit. But I'm still very skeptical. Toronto's going to match everything.
You'd have to.
OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, those guys aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, for quickly, because I get asked about him a lot by Magic fans. You'd probably have to go to a max offer sheet to get to Toronto to blink on that. And that's where
that's excessive.
Gone a little too far. Right. And that will cause you issues down the line for stuff I know we want to get into in a minute here. So for the Magic, I think trades are definitely going to be heavily involved here, because I'll just use Zach LaVine just as the example. Let's say they go $25 million in cap space. Well, of the 40 plus million he's going to make, now you don't really have to match all that much to get him. You only have to get to $10, $12 million to match to get him, because you're going to use the rest through cap space to bring him in. So that just makes the whole process that much easier, because you're not in a spot where it is, all right, I got to send this out. I had a couple of people say, but should the Magic be in a spot where they're open to trading draft picks? Sure. Don't get crazy about it. I don't think you need to be, hey, you want
that Denver pick next year, that top 5 Denver pick. I've been trying to hawk that for 2 years in my mock trades.
Yeah, move that out. I'm even okay if they want to move out one of their own picks within the next couple of years, because we're in a point where those should probably be late teens, early 20s picks. That's where the team is headed. So don't get silly. We don't need to do 4 picks and pick swaps on the intervening years. Yeah, I mean, I guess if I don't even know who, but the best one of the LNBA guys becomes available, all right, then, yeah, if that's where you want to go, sure. I guess I don't have a problem there. But I'd be very open to moving draft capital because there's such a thing as being too young. And one of the things that's going to work against the Magic slightly here is a lot of these guys all need paid at the same time. And when I say same time, that's within a year or two of each other. And if they all get paid what we think they might get paid, all of a sudden you're running into, well, wait a minute. You don't need to repeat that by being so precious with we have to keep every draft pick we have. Look at the Memphis Grizzlies. They are kind of in a lot of ways, I think, set almost a little bit of a blueprint for the Magic where it was build through the draft and develop your own, supplement with occasional signings here and there, the occasional trade here and there, but we're really going to build it up this way. And then what happened with the Grizzlies was they landed in a place where now all of a sudden, in this year's different because the wheels came off and everything fell apart, but a very good team. But now you don't have room for all those guys you drafted. It's guys like Zaire Williams, some of the other guys that they're starting to cut bait on and move on from. Even if those guys are like, they're pretty good, you just run out of roster spots. It just becomes a numbers game at that point. So that's where, for the Magic, you've got your young talent base. Let's not be so precious about trading draft picks. Let's be reasonable. If there's a trade that comes up, that you got to move a couple draft picks in, I'd be all over doing a trade like that.
Yeah, and the Magic, when we get to the trade discussions, like the Magic can't be so married to their players. Like the players you're married to are Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs. Probably those are probably your three guys that matter most. Everyone else, you have to at least be willing to have a discussion about. Because look, my understanding of the way the Magic operated at the trade deadline this year, I know a lot of fans are like, this is why the Magic need to go get shooting. Why didn't they go get Alec Burks or go get this guy or that guy? And it's just like, everything I heard, the Magic were just really afraid to break up the group mid-season because the chemistry was just so good. I even told people, like, even a guy like Markelle Fultz, who's, very clearly kind of on it, maybe not kind of more on his way out, doesn't really fit what the Magic need from the spot. Everyone on the team just loves the dude. Everybody's about that dude and everything he's about and everything he represents. They're not going to let him go so easily. And so, the Magic now are kind of at a point where, like, they got to, we talked a little about Wendell Carter, whether he's the answer at center. They got to ask themselves that question. Cole Anthony and Wendell Carter are kind of the two big contracts they have to trade. Like, they have to really think about, okay, is this trade worth it to move those guys? And Cole Anthony's a big culture guy too. Wendell Carter's a big culture guy too, honestly. I think Markelle and Wendell's voices carry a lot of weight with that group. And so you have to, you do have to be a little bit careful there. But the second
thing on that, do you remember what Jeff Weltman said at his opening press conference when he was hired by the Magic? What he was asked,
so long ago now.
I think it might have been Josh Robbins, who was still here. I think he might have been the one who asked, how do you go about fixing the culture here? Do you remember his response to that?
Besides saying he hates the word culture.
Burned in my memory. He hates the word culture. And he said, I've never seen a bad team with good culture or a good team with bad culture. Like, it's always, he was like, it's just a word people use. And and then he went on to explain how, yes, we want to draft good people who are good players. And that's now I think the two things he's most known for is this guy's a great person who we think is going to be a great player, and it's a great time to be in Orlando.
High basketball
Magic
IQ, yeah.
Yeah, and wingspan. He doesn't say it, but we know he loves it.
Oh no, he joked. So I forget. I think it was after his second draft. He came in after.
Oh yeah, I remember.
He came in and he joked with all of us.
Yeah.
Long night, long players. They know the joke.
Oh yeah, he's very aware of what gets said. But and then I like I was mentioned there, he loves it's a great time to be an Orlando Magic fan. Like, he's been saying that almost since day one.
You've been saying that. He's right though.
Yeah, it finally paid off, right? But I think the culture thing, though, even though he may say I hate that word, there is truth to it. You have to be very careful when a group does like each other, they've grown together, they've really built into something. You have to be very careful unfortunately, part of that is you do have to take some of that away, because if you want to be better, you got to remove some of it. You just got to be careful how you go about doing that. And I think they're going to be very cautious in the way they do that. And they're not going to bring in people who are, the guy's kind of known for being a little bit of a selfish jerk, but he can really score, he can really shoot. they're not going to make moves like that. I don't think that's going to be a thing. I think they're going to be very smart and strategic about the players they bring in. And guess what? The good news is you can find players who can score and shoot that aren't kind of jerks. And now we were one player away here from being a championship contender in Orlando. Then your tolerance for a guy who's kind of an idiot, that changes a little bit, because it's that guy could push us over the top and you kind of go a little bit of a different direction. Right now, we're not quite there yet.
For sure. And I think that's a really good point. You did mention that this is a summer of trades. And I think the other part that plays into this, I don't think it necessarily should affect the Magic and the way they operate and the things they want to do. But I do think there's a little bit of a keeping up with the Joneses, because there are, just say the goal next year is to get out of the first round, or like the Magic all said it at exit interviews, the goal is to get home court advantage. There's only 4 of those spots. There's only 4 spots to get out of home court advantage. And let's just assume Boston, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee are taking 3 of those spots. I know obviously Philadelphia had a down year because of the injuries to Embiid. They're not going anywhere. They're going to come back with a vengeance. Milwaukee was the 3 seed, had Giannis Antetokounmpo out. They still got Damian Lillard. They got a lot of things to figure out, but that's still a very, very good team. Cleveland's probably not going anywhere. Indiana's probably not going anywhere. Miami's going to bounce back with a vengeance. We can all assume.
The Knicks aren't going anywhere.
The Knicks aren't going anywhere. This is like it honestly feels like the 8 teams for the playoffs are set for a little while, depending on what Cleveland does, obviously. But do you have to keep up with the Joneses here? Do the Magic have to, I don't think the Magic want to do something just to do something. They're going to do something that addresses their needs. And I think they understand there's still a lot of internal growth to come. But do the Magic have to keep up with the Joneses to some extent?
Yeah, I think they do to a reasonable extent. Because some of what they have going for them, especially compared to some of the other teams that are like in their group in the East, other than maybe Indiana, is they can bank on a lot of internal improvements still to come because they are so young. But if you bank on that so much, you're going to run yourself into trouble if it doesn't happen. And let's face it, nobody hits on 100% with draft picks and with player development. Some guys will fall through, some guys won't work out. So you have to be very cautious of making that just everything you're going to do. So there's a little bit of keeping up with the rest of the teams in the conference, because you not only you're trying to catch the ones in front of you, you got to keep an eye on the teams behind you too, like you mentioned, because Philly's probably going to be better. Miami, we'll see if they take the regular season any more serious, with that. But the Knicks are going to be a good team again. Cleveland, we'll see, but should be a good team again. Indiana's going to get better. A couple of the teams that fell out, like there's a world where you could see maybe Atlanta flips this the right way and they're back in the mix. Chicago at times has been okay. Maybe Toronto has a quick flip and they're right back into it. I think some of the teams further down, like Detroit, Washington, Charlotte, they're far enough back, you're not overly worried. Brooklyn's another team that could flip things very, very quickly too. So you just got to be very careful of just, you don't want to, all right, we did it. We got there. Now let's just let all the young guys improve, because young improvement is not linear. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes guys don't get better. Sometimes injuries happen that impact that. So you want to try to push through to go get players that can lift you, build out your depth a little bit. I don't know that the Magic are going to walk away from this offseason with everybody being like, holy cow, they made the all-in of all-in trades.
They're not going to win the summer.
Yeah, but I think they will come away with, all right, they made moves that made a lot of sense, and there are guys who really fit around this group, and they've got their stars. Paolo and Franz are the guys they hope grow into being, for in Paolo's case, multi-time all-star, all-NBA level guy, Franz, all-star level guy. That's where you hope. And I don't know that it happens this summer because you have another busy summer, but let's figure out what happened to Franz's jump shot. Like whatever went on there, that's like, to me, that is the single biggest mystery in the league. Other than there were moments this year where I thought he looked tired and he wasn't getting the lift on his shot and his legs weren't in it the way they were, which is kind of understandably an extremely long summer. I don't know what happened.
Some of it just became mental at a certain point. Like you could see him passing up shots and just hesitating.
That's the thing that bothered me most, honestly, was when he started moving out of some of the shots that he should have taken. Because then it bled into, it initially started with missed 3-pointers. Then it was, I'm going to skip the 3-pointer, dribble into an 18-footer. That didn't go in. Then it became, all right, now I'm going to try to get all the way into the paint. And then that's where I thought he got himself in even more trouble. So that's just, let's solve that mystery. I don't know who, send him to the Chip Engelland School of Shooting or whatever it needs to be, or just show him old tape or whatever and remind him somehow. Maybe he needs to sleep with a "you're a good shooter" message playing in his ears every night. I don't know, but get his jump shot figured out.
Mo will do that. Mo will just be whispering in his ear all night.
Yeah, all the way to the Olympics, right? He'll be letting him know. But that's where I think we're not going to see that superstar summer, but I think you're going to see a summer where we're going to walk away and say, man, I didn't make enough of moves X, Y, and Z that the Magic made, but boy, I like that team now. They've got good depth. They made moves that made sense. And that's where there's a lot of guys like that that'll be available, whether it be through trade. There's a couple kind of, I think, a little undervalued free agents now that people aren't really talking about. And the nice thing for the Magic is you could even overpay a guy or two if you did it on like a 2-year deal, right? You could kind of go in and say, hey, if they were really like Malik Monk, we got to have him. And everybody else is like, hey, we topped out at $20 million. The Magic could say, hey, we'll give you 25. Yeah. That's not going to tip into being a bad contract. Let's go. 25 is probably more like the floor.
I've been like capped at 23.
Yeah.
My Locked On Kings guy thinks 23 is the number.
Yeah. 23, 25. I mean, that's, at that point
we'll talk about why that's not important in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. So, but if you said, I don't know, even if it was the Klay Thompson long rumored thing of, you know what, hey, we really want him. We're going to give him a deal that's functionally a 1-year deal for $30 million. All right. Not going to bother me. There's almost no contract you could give out that's bad if it's 1 year, because you're just in a place where, all right, that's fine.
You're just rolling your cap over another year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's where I think, where we're going to see them make very smart moves with all this stuff.
I want to thank Keith once again for hopping on. I told him when we recorded that we were going to try and squeeze it into 30 minutes, make it one episode. He said, sure. We've never talked before. Thought we'd have to. We're going to make it a 3-part episode. 3-part episode here. So we'll be back tomorrow with Keith Smith. We're going to close the show out talking about the effects of the new NBA's new TV deal and what that means for extension talks for Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs. We're going to get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic as we close out our conversation with Keith Smith. So I want to thank him for taking the time, giving me 3 days of beautiful, 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 sweet content. Love that about us. You can, of course, find him on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA, Twitter or X, whatever it's called, at Keith Smith NBA, and find all his great work at Spotrac. That's SPOTRAC.com. Check out his great work there. He's slowly going to be getting to the Magic offseason preview. We'll be sure to link that as well when he gets to it. It's going in playoff in order that teams have been eliminated. Magic were the last team eliminated from the first round. It's, we're back in the line here. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter or X at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun based on podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can also check us out on YouTube. Search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And also be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub. You can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. I've wrapped up my season review on there, my usual postseason review that I do on Orlando Magic Daily. I moved that to the Orlando Magic Hub. I'll be moving on to player evaluations here for the next week or so. I'll probably combine a few players, but I will be doing I'll be doing my player evaluations on the Patreon page. So be sure to check that out at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as always, thank you for your support. Like I said, on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we will dive into the new NBA TV deal, what that means for extensions for Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs, and how the Magic handle that and handle free agency with the new cap climate that's coming. We'll also probably dive into some recaps of the weekend that was in the NBA playoffs. Want to stay current on what's going on there. We'll delay draft Tuesday to Wednesday. We'll talk draft on Wednesday, but that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, as well as on Amazon Fire TV. Get all the great analysis from local experts on all the big stories in sports, not just basketball, in sports, from people who know their teams best. Check it out today. That's Locked On Sports Today on YouTube as well as on Amazon Fire TV. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.